Hello everyone, today we're going to make battery connections on marine cable. So here's one I made earlier. That's 16mm squared marine cable with a battery lug, whatever you want to call it, terminal. See, it's still flexible, insulation, it's all snug. Right, so let me get into this. This is marine cable. It's different to automotive cable. See, it's tinned, very thin strand. Automotive cable will be thicker strand and just copper. These are copper strands, but they're tinned to resist moisture. See, they're very thin. It's a lot more flexible. It's the only thing you should be using for marine purposes. The other stuff, it really isn't very good, and you'll notice there's a lot of automotive cable on boats, and it shouldn't be. It's probably a bit cheaper, that's why. Okay, so let's start by, I think we'll cut this off in a minute. Oh, here's the lugs. So that's a 16/8. So that's the size of the hole. The 16 is the size of the cable. Get it right. Don't try and butcher it. You'll see so many tutorials where people are like hammering on massive lugs. It doesn't work. That's an inspection hole. We'll come to that in a minute. Right. So we start by just cutting it off. Again, use the right cutters. Talk about that in a second. So you want a nice clean cut to start you off. There you go. And these cutters, they're only about £3 on eBay. And they're very good. They'll stay sharp for quite a long time. Again, just do it. Don't be tempted to hacksaw it off. Don't be tempted to do it any other way. It doesn't work. So measure up against the lug. I put my thumb there, and we go back to the cutters again. I find this the safest way of doing it, because if you're careful, you'll very gently get through the insulation. We'll see this in a second. And it'll do the job of removing the insulation almost better than anything else. Don't use a Stanley knife. That'll mark up the tinning. It'll cut strands off. The strands are very thin. See, there's nothing taken out. Perfect there. And there's also no marks on the stranding. When you get the lug, these lugs are great because they're flared at the end, which means the strands will pull in perfectly without buckling back, and they'll come straight up to that inspection hole. This type of lug has a pressed inspection hole, which isn't the best. This one has a cut inspection hole, which I think is a bit better because the stranding can go that much further into the lug. But you want to make sure your lug's right up against insulation like that. Right, here's the crimping tool. This is a hydraulic 10-ton crimping tool. Fantastic thing, only about £20 on eBay. Again, just do it, just pay for it. You'll find so many uses for it. And let me just show you something. So I've got a marked 10, what would you call it, chuck or bit, and that's what I'll be using on these terminals. See, they've got a lot of clearance there for crushing. Let me show you the 16. If you were to use 16 with the 16, it doesn't really work. So don't feel that you have to use the number that corresponds to the square millimeter of your lugs. It's really just whatever works. Hang on, I think I'm just going to show you an example here. There you go, look, so there's no movement for that to be crushed. And if you were to crush that up, you just damage the bits. So here we go with the 16 lug in the 10 marked bit. And all you do is crimp it up. There's not much effort involved, it's a very strong thing. What you don't want to do is get those bits to meet and then keep going, because it's so strong it'll actually fracture the chuck or the bit. So they're almost meeting there. Done. It's that simple. And that's an incredibly strong connection in itself, electrically and mechanically. So here's me. I think I'll try and pull it off here. Let's have a look. What am I trying to show you there? Oh yeah, the stranding is up at the end. We'll come back to that inspection hole in a minute. So there you go. Look, I'm trying to pull it apart. You could hang off that. It's very strong. And what I would do is solder. So I'd use that much solder through the inspection hole. Now, you only use a tiny bit of solder for an electrical connection. You don't want it to get into the strands because it reduces the flexibility. And then the final part, I didn't do that in this example, I couldn't find the blow lamp, but here we go. So the final part is the insulation. I measure about 3 times back the length from the flat on the lug, cut that off square. This insulation, shrink wrap, whatever you want to call it, has adhesive glue on the inside, and that's very important. You don't want to use the normal shrink wrap. Get the stuff with the adhesive glue. You see how it's very big compared to the cable? That's okay, and I'll show you why. So I meet it up there to the flat, and I think I go away and heat it up here just on a hob, because again I couldn't find my heat gun, but use a heat gun, much safer. So that's shrunk on. You see the glue's coming out the back there. That's the first thing you want to look for. It's got to be completely coming out the end there. And at the front, you crimp it down with your fingers and make sure the glue's coming out there too. You can just see it in this video. It's a bit blurry, GoPro. But you want it completely sealed and shrunk down. And look how thick the insulation is. That's a really good example. It's nice and thick and it's not going to get damaged. And we're done. There you go. How to make terminals. Hooray!